guys about building a successful permaculture business today. And I want to start out with just what a successful business is. I think that sometimes, especially in permaculture, farming, ranching, we get so caught up in, well, what great technique can we come up with? Or how many, pounds or tons per acre of production can we get, that we lose sight of basic business processes. So I don't know that I would be saying this necessarily if I was teaching a class to people that were going to go out and be Fortune 500 CEOs. They would probably just snap right to this. But a successful business has got to be first and foremost profitable. And I think that in some aspects of permaculture, we've made profit into a dirty word. And that's why people will do things like set up their business as a nonprofit and ignore the fact that people like the American Red Cross make billions of dollars and pay CEOs equally absorbent salaries as any other corporation. So profit is not a dirty word. It's what we do with profit. It's a tool. And in business, our profit is the means by which we stay in business, remain sustainable, and serve our customers. And without that, we do not have a business. Joel said you had to have 2 salaries coming out of your business, and I agree with that. That's at least 2 is 1, 1 is none from my world. But I'll say it this way: it has to be a profitable business to be sustainable. You also have to be putting in more value than you're taking out. So if your business is earning $500,000 a year, you better be producing, let's say $600,000. That's the very definition of sustainable. So profit in itself is not bad. It's a value equation. But what makes a business profitable? The same things that make a business successful. And what you really have to understand about every business that's successful, it's got 2 things that are always well defined. Number 1, the business's mission is well defined. And if you can't tell me what your business does in 2 sentences, you have not yet defined the mission of your business. That doesn't mean that I'll know everything about your business, but I should be able to have you give me 2 sentences or less and know what the mission and objective of your business is. The next thing is the revenue model has got to be well defined. I talk to people that are going to start up a business, permaculture or otherwise. Well, what's your revenue model? Well, we're going to make stuff and sell it to customers. That is not a revenue model. That's not a revenue model. A revenue model is a clearly defined model that says how you're going to produce what you're going to produce, how you're going to account for the expenses, the time, and the labor for those things, and how you're going to market and sell it and your expected profit, and you should also be able to condense that into 2 sentences. Not every piece of it, but let me put it to you this way. I don't suggest that anybody here go out and get in front of a venture capitalist. Those guys are predators. But you should be able to define your business and those 2 components of your business as though you were going to. Who here's watched Shark Tank? Anybody watch Shark Tank? You see the way those guys are? Sometimes you think they're mean, but what they're actually doing is saying, you've just put a value on your business of $1 million. You've got an entrepreneur there with this, he looks like a deer in the headlights. He has no idea. Well, how do you say I just put a value on my business for $1 million? Well, you just asked me for $100,000 for 10% of your business, so you valued your business at $1 million. It's that simple of an equation. And then they can't define their revenue or their business model. Because there's so many people in permaculture that are leaving employment to do their own thing that don't think like entrepreneurs. Those are 2 things that get left out. Do not leave them out of your business. You really need to make sure your business is resilient. And that means you need to make sure you have multiple streams of income in your business. You cannot build a business on chickens, right? That can be a product within your business. You cannot build a business on corn or wheat, not that most people in this building would want to, with an understanding of what monocropping has done to our society as a whole and to our land as well. But it's amazing that you will get people that will think along the lines of, well, I'm just going to do 2 or 3 things in my business. This actually really doesn't hit the person in a permaculture business mindset that's going into farm and ranching very much, because permaculture by itself necessitates diversity and variety and stacking of levels and functions and zones, so you end up with diversity in a productive model. Where this really hits people is people that go into the consulting model. They come up with one model of consulting. I'm going to get clients, I'm going to go out, and they're going to give me money to tell them what to do. Not only is that not actually a revenue model or a business model that's well-defined, it's also, even if you do it and you do it well, all it takes is one blip in your local economy to take away people with the disposable income to have you come tell them what to do to tank your business. So you cannot have a resilient business with a single revenue or even two revenue streams. You have to have multiple streams of income, which we'll get into today. The business has to be easy to do business with. My wife can tell you, sometimes I kind of go mental on the computer. I have a company that I know I want to do business with, and I've actually been seen with my wallet shoving at the screen. I want to give you money. Please take my money. How do I buy from you? Do not make your business difficult to do business with. Make it very clear what you do, what you provide, and how that customer can do business with you. And if you say, well, I'm in consulting, every job is different, I don't really know how much I'm going to charge, well then give the customer an entryway to do business with you. A simple form that asks them qualifying questions. Start the process. Write this down. Train your customers to do business with you. Your first contact, whether it's face-to-face, through a referral, or through your website, should initiate a process of teaching your customer how you do business. Because people actually want to do business with you. They really do. If they didn't, they wouldn't be paying attention to you at all. But many times you can't really tell, well, how do I do business with this customer? How am I going to do business with this company? What do they provide? Do they do what I need? I'm in Florida, they're in Georgia. Do they travel this far? Try to make those things as evident as possible. The next thing is, a business has to sell an easy-to-understand value. So, who here has bought something because they thought they were throwing their money away? Not you found out later you were, but who here is like, you know what? I really think that if I buy this thing, I might as well just flush my money down the toilet, so I'm going to go buy it. So what that means is whenever we buy anything, whenever we spend our hard-earned dollars on anything, we do so from a standpoint of I'm getting something equal to or exceeding the value of the money that I'm spending, unless we're forced to buy it. That's when you're buying a need. You'll buy food if you have no food, because you got to eat, right? But you will not buy crappy food if you can buy good food and if you can afford it. You'll buy what you like. And that means you have a certain perceived value in your mind. And I think a lot of people really don't get that when they go into business. This slide is the one when I did the walkthrough of this presentation, it went over an hour. I'm going to have somebody hold up a stop sign so I can't go over an hour. I'm going to cut back on this one a little bit. But I really think that everybody that's interested in building a business, permaculture or not, needs to read the article by Ethan Rowland on Appleseed Permaculture on the 8 Forms of Capital. And I've done a lot with this on the air, as some of you know. I even did a whole series on my business podcast, 5 Minutes with Jack, just on this, breaking it down. And what I really want to say when I put this up and put the word capital up there, there's these guys in this place called the IRS. They have no sense of humor at all. Okay? They don't use this definition of capital on your balance sheet. So when I say this, I'm talking about it from your mindset of how you develop your business. But I want to go through these. The first one is social capital. Social capital has always been valuable to a business. It's what leads to referrals. It's what leads to trust in the marketplace. But there has never been a time in human history where social capital is as valuable as it is today. One person on Twitter can steer 20,000 people. Back in the day, so to speak, which was like 1985, right? If you tweaked somebody off and they knew a few people, they could do a little bit of damage to your business. Today, you tweak off the wrong person, you can have 1 million people hating you tomorrow, dedicated to putting you out of existence. It's probably not going to happen to anybody here. But properly harnessed, you can have 1 million people dedicated to keeping you in business. Now that's pretty powerful. And there's never been, in permaculture we often look at technology and think, we've gone too far, what have you. We need to really understand the value of technology and what it brings to the table and how we can further our mission with it. So social capital is what allowed me to get many of you people to take time off of work and come here. Because after years and years of doing the show, I've built up a level of trust with you. Social capital is one of the most valuable things a business can have. This is something you need to be cultivating. It's a word that you'll hear me use often when I talk about businesses. There's 2 types of businesses in the world. There's farming and there's mining. And there's no way you're going to build a business in permaculture based on mining, because it's opposite of what permaculture principles are. But if you're farming in your business, that means you're farming, it means you're cultivating your relationships with your vendors, with your employees, with your customers, with partners in that business, with everybody. Cultivation leads to social capital. Financial capital, I'm going to go right over, that's money. Most of us understand that, so I'll just leave it at that one. Living capital. Living capital could be defined in a variety of ways. One would be if you had a great big campus and you had a beautiful permacultured campus, which might be a good business to go into, doing that for people like Oracle Software that have a campus larger than most college campuses, right where I used to live in Arlington, Texas. But that would be living capital for them if they actually transformed their land. If you had a farm and you have a permaculture infrastructure installed and life, that's living capital. But the business itself can take on a life. There's a certain life manifested in well-defined and built businesses, where if the people that were running the business today died, someone else could pick that business up and continue to run with it. A business with a living presence continues to grow beyond what you do. So if you look at Survival Podcast, for instance, we have huge communities attached, like sub-communities, like on Zello with the two-way radio thing on the smartphones and the computers. You know, I didn't really do that. I set it up and people took it over. Our forum. These are ways that my community's creating communities and drawing more people into the core. And some stay out in the sub-communities, and that's okay. But that means the business has life. And you can do that with any business, from selling used tires to growing livestock and fruits and nuts to a software design consultancy. So think about how you can infuse and cultivate life into your business. Intellectual capital. This is where modern business has lost its mind. They hold on to everything. They don't want anybody, it's called IPR, right? Intellectual property rights. I don't care to tell you how many entrepreneurs have come to me and go, I have a great idea for a business, but I want you to sign an NDA before I tell you what it is. I'm like, go away. I can't even talk to you, because your idea has probably been pitched by 400 other people in the last 5 days. Intellectual capital, when you think about it that way, is very narrow. It's just what you own and control in your business. When you broaden that, now you get power, now you put life in the business. See, these capital systems beget themselves. If I want living capital in my business, I need intellectual capital. Living beings think. They evolve, especially humans. We evolve thought. So when I look at my intellectual capital, I see not just the people that work in my business as being a source of that intellectual capital. My customers are intellectual capital. They tell me what they want next. That's insight that no one else can give me. No consultant can give me that. Only my customers can give me that. If I have suppliers and they know their sector better than me, they're intellectual capital in my business. And everything that we produce, that we send out, that people take and do something with somewhere else that they don't hide, we can then look at that through open source and pull it back into our business. And now we have living capital and intellectual capital generated by our business somewhere else, backfeeding it. Sound familiar to permaculture? Right? These are closed-loop systems if we don't try to hold on to knowledge too tightly. Human capital. This is where people start. If I say, I see you as human capital, you're like, well, gee, thanks for owning me. No, we need to redefine what that means. Human capital means that I honor you as a fellow being, that I see value in you. Not just what you can do for me, but by the very fact that you are yourself. And now we start taking that human capital equation, we apply it to our employees, our vendors, our customers, companies that we have friendly, competitive relationships with. We value each other. And we build up human capital within our business and our business communities. Spiritual capital. I don't care if you're an atheist. Spiritual capital applies to business, because if we have a living business with living capital, then it has to have a sense of being, a sense of purpose, something larger than itself, a mission bigger than itself. And a lot of people will take that and go a little bit too far with it. Like they might say, you know what, dude, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a permaculture business. I'm going to get a farm on the moon in a crater with a dome. I know, that's way out there. But I want you to think you can have big, big dreams, even that big if you really want to. But sometimes a dream that seems little in intention to have this goal larger than yourself can seem small but be monumentous. What if you said, my goal, one of my goals to enhance the spiritual capital of my business is that in my town, my community, what have you, radius around my business of about 5,000 people. 3 years after I start my business, I simply want most of those 5,000 people, if you walked up to them and said, what is permaculture, they would know an answer. It doesn't seem that big, but how many places could you do that right now? That doesn't mean they know it's Tom's Permaculture and Design Consultancy. It just means your goal is for them to know what permaculture is. That takes on a spiritual essence within the business. It starts to reach out and multiply. At the end of today's presentation, I'll tell you a way that can happen, and I'll show it to you. Most of you are holding it right now and don't even know you are. Cultural capital. Cultural capital is the essence of what it is to be associated with your business and your community or your family. There are companies that pay their people okay, but there's companies that pay more, and people still want to go to work for that mid-tier company as far as the pay. Because why? It's a cool place to work. You know, Google has a massive amount of cultural capital. People want to work for Google, not just because they're a marketing leader, but because of the culture they've built. So cultural capital is extremely valuable, and material capital. Material capital is all the stuff. But if you start to think about stacking principles in permaculture, then the material capital that your suppliers own actually becomes an asset to your business. The material capital that your customers own becomes an asset to your business. When you set up a U-Pick operation and your customer gets in his vehicle and drives to your farm and picks and then puts the food in and takes it home to his family, his material capital, his vehicle, has become a capital asset within your business. That's just one way to think about that. And the more ways you can think about that, the more ways you can build value on all sides of the business and reduce your overhead without victimizing anyone, because who here wishes more people would pack their kids up on weekends and take them out to do U-Pick? Right? Wouldn't that be cool? Right? As long as we can keep kids being allowed on the farms. I'm going to go through this one quick, but a successful business, somebody jumped to the end, right? A successful business acts like a business. Do not be a walking lawsuit waiting to happen. I recently had a conversation with somebody running a permaculture consultancy. Brilliant person, really brilliant. I mean, absolutely switched on from a design standpoint. When we looked at how he was doing business, though, sole proprietorship, no written agreement with the customer, using heavy equipment on customer property. Crosshairs of a lawyer. I ended that with, if I were an ambulance chasing lawyer and found out about your business, I would get one of my buddies to hire you just so I could sue you. Because anything that gets messed up, you're going to be responsible for. So make sure you have written agreements. Written agreements are not about whether or not you trust or even protection. They're about setting expectations. So if you have a written agreement with your client, then it's easy for you to meet their expectations because both of you know clearly what they are. And if you ever get into a point where you're not sure what they were, you can both look at it. And then you can both agree, yeah, that's what we were supposed to do. Written agreements are not to defend you in court, they're to keep you out of court. 90% of the time they'll do that job. Because most of the time when somebody sues, they're not ambulance chasers. What they actually are people that feel that they've been slighted or taken advantage of, and they see it as their only recourse. With clearly defined roles on both sides, that usually doesn't happen. It either results in, hey, look, this is really not enough, I'll pay you more, or I can't afford you. Both of those are preferable to losing your business in a lawsuit. Next one, have and use a good CPA. Do not do your own taxes. Do not do your own taxes. You can do your own bookkeeping, but don't do your own taxes. Let your CPA determine what's deductible and what's not. And make sure you're having conversations with them about these deductions, because I'll tell you what happens. If you had a client that came to you and said, hey, look, how do I fix my land? And half their fertility was washing in the street, one of the first things you would do is say, well, let's stop that. Let's keep this fertility on the land so it can be productive. Well, if you have a bleeding or leaching of your revenue anywhere, whether it's the IRS or through poorly maintained equipment, your business cannot be as highly optimized as it should, just like a system can't be highly optimized if it's leaking fertility. Discuss your corporate entity structure with a CPA and a tax lawyer. Do you see there's no or in there? See, it says CPA and tax lawyer. Do you know why? They have different viewpoints into the same thing, and they're both experts where you're not. And I would tell you, once you have a conversation with both of them, and you think you know what you want to do, put them together and let them talk to each other. And they will come up with a bulletproof way to protect your business. And look at it this way. You are not, maybe you are. If you're a CPA or a tax lawyer, you can do that one thing for yourself. Most of you are not. Who's a tax lawyer in here? CPA? Okay, so we have none. So the reason you would go out as a consultant is because you know things your client doesn't. That's why you hire a CPA or a tax lawyer. The next thing, set up business accounts. Don't do business into your personal accounts. It's called commingling. Again, these guys from the IRS, I call them Ira Ramon Sancia. It's the highest level gangster that's ever existed, right? Ira has no sense of humor at all with the commingling of accounts. It's seen as a way to hide money. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying how it's seen. And carry the necessary insurances. Get a good insurance agent. Your buddy that says, I've had Tom, he's a great agent, I've had him my whole life, but Tom takes care of his life and his home and his car, is not the insurance agent for you. You want to find an insurance agent that specializes in businesses and protect your business. And accept Bitcoin because it pisses off the establishment. I really mean that. Actually, I see Bitcoin as like a global let system. When we turn to alternatives for a global nation in the PDC, we talk about things like lets. Ways that we can keep our value in our community and exchange value for value in our community with our own community currencies. And I see electronic currencies as an evolution of that on a global scale. So let's talk about the different places you can actually earn money, because that's what you guys came to hear, right? Number one, PDCs, right, for education. So the educational revenue model, I think, is a very valid one. I think if you're going to go into farming, I think you should include some education in your practice. But I think we have a tendency in permaculture, because we can sell the PDC for a high dollar amount, and because people are willing to pay for it, to look at it like, okay, this is what I do as a consultant now. I've gotten my PDC, I've gotten some additional training, I've gotten some teaching hours, now I'm going to go out and teach it. There's nothing wrong with it. But the reality is, I've seen people, who here has seen a person that's taken a PDC and just kind of felt like, well, that's not really what I thought it was? A few anyway, right? And some of those people would be better off taking a course specific to their region just on backyard design, because that's what they really want. So I think the reason that sometimes people feel that they didn't get what they were looking for out of a PDC is because we in permaculture understand its value so highly that we sell it as being what it's really worth, which is, in my view, tens of thousands of dollars if applied over a lifetime. But the customer hears, I'm going to have this full ability to do all of these wonderful things in just 2 weeks. And it's like you bought a $100 product for $70, so you did get a value, but the salesman told you it was worth $150. Even though you got a fair value, you don't really understand why you didn't get what you thought you were getting. And I think we need to do a better job as consultants and teachers of educating our students to what a PDC does and does not do. And I think it's a great high-level educational product, but it needs to be one arrow in a very, very big quiver. Workshops, I think, actually have a much bigger opportunity, especially for those that want to build their business locally. Hands-on or multi-day specific classes where people can learn, 50 plants you can plant in our local area you've never heard of. I'd go to that. I'd pay money to go to that. And I'd go there tomorrow if I wasn't here with all of you wonderful people and I was at home and somebody was running it across the street, because I'd want to know. And there's so many people that want a piece of what we have, but they're not ready for all of it yet. So break it down into the pieces that they're looking for and sell them that. Getting into more like conventional classes, right? So classes that are like 1 day or a couple hours long. This is kind of your, as a consultant, this is your gold, but you're just like, this is your panning gold instead of your big sluice box. Because you can do a lot of these, and it will make you a better teacher. Every time you get in front of people and talk, you get better at it. It's kind of like, you know, you actually learn from experience. But every time you do that and you talk to 20 or 30 people and they do anything with the information you've given them, they're spreading your message. And again, that can go toward that goal of making 5,000 people in your area know what permaculture means, but it can also go toward your goal of getting more business because they will come back to you. Writing, video, audio. This is marketing and revenue. And it's a huge hole that I see really big name permaculture people miss all the time. They come to a place like this, they do a presentation, all these people come out in front and listen to them, and then they say, well, maybe you can buy my book on Amazon. I want to show you guys how to actually create value right now. So I'm going to sell you something. I'm going to sell some of you guys something. This is a USB stick. Holds 8 gigabytes of data. It's titanium metal case. They sell for 15 bucks on Amazon, 8 gigs. I get them for $5 a piece on Tiger Direct, but if you bought one, you'd pay about 15 bucks for it. I'm going to sell these at the end of the presentation. You can see my wife. We have like 30 of them made up, and I can make up another 20 over the next couple days for 20 bucks. It's got this entire presentation on it, a little bit different version, so you can go back through it. It's also got like 6 other presentations on it, screen capture and video, and it's got a bunch of other cool stuff on it and all my PowerPoint decks. Is anybody here going to want to buy one of these? Look around. That's money on the table. I'm not going to get rich off of it, but it'll pay gas money for the rental car, right? This is thinking about taking something you're already doing, and all I've got to do is keep my file and drag it and drop it onto a stick. And I'm actually giving you value because you're actually paying $5 for the data. But I'm making a better profit because you're probably not going to go buy 50 of these. Right? I mean, not many people are going to go buy 50 of these, but maybe you should if you're going to be doing things like this. And I think location-specific education is a hugely overlooked opportunity. It's great that we have people here from all over the world, basically, right now. But, man, we need to be really marketing this stuff right in our own backyards. If we're going to tell people to eat food that has 0 food miles on it, but all our consulting's coming from 1,000 miles away, what's up with that, right? We need to be actually effectively marketing ourselves right in our own backyards. Who lives in a place where your entire neighborhood is already a permaculture paradise? We're not done yet. I saw one guy with a hand coming up over there. I want to live where you live. He's probably from Village Homes. But in most instances, there's incredible opportunity right where we live. On consulting, here's my thoughts on consulting. Kind of the thing that I see most opportunity for myself, that I end up, generally because I don't do consulting, referring it to others, is basic property planning. This is a client that really almost could do it themselves. Maybe they could. They're sort of educated to what permaculture is. Sometimes they even have a PDC, but it's the first time they've ever thought about I'm going to have an excavator here, or I'm going to spend all of this money on plants and sheet mulching materials, and they just have a little bit of a confidence lack. And they're thinking, what do I plant? How do I gild it together? How do I make it work? These are clients that when you talk to them, you honestly feel like, dude, you could do this. But what they're asking from you is to come in and kind of give them the mile-high view and put them on the path toward that development. And they're either going to take what you give them and run with it, or they're going to have you come back time to time for repeat business, which is also good. These guys are great. You want as many of these as you can get because they're not extremely time-consuming types of clients. You don't have to explain to them why you're going to put a swale there. They just need to know that you're going to do it, and they need to know where it would go. And they may either take that on themselves or they may ask you to move further down. Full design. That's end-to-end planning, professional design, prints, stuff in SketchUp and things like that. I can't do that kind of work, and who here cannot do a professional, just bang-on design, with the artistic quality, I mean? A lot of us, right? Who here can? See, all these people, all of you guys, if you're going to do consulting, talk to them and set up a relationship with them, and you do your hand draws, and you flip those guys' business and throw, a cost plus 25 on that and sell that to your client. Because that's a specialized skill, and it takes a lot of time to really do that type of detailed work. And some clients want it, so sell them what they're looking for. Project management. This is where you're on site, watching the machine work. Put it in the ground there, telling the operator you're going too deep when you're putting a dam or a swale in. Right? This is where the guy's getting some people to help maybe, but you're there on sheet mulching day. That's not deep enough. You're actually there during the installation. This is generally legally safe in most places too. Here's where it goes gray. When you start doing the work, I'll bring in a crew, we'll do it for you. I don't care if we don't call it landscaping. In most governmental regulations, you are now a landscaper. In some cities, this doesn't mean anything at all. They could care less. In some cities, you have to have a license and a permit and all kinds of other stuff. So this is where Joel said, just do it and then ask for forgiveness. You might want to be careful in certain situations. It's one thing that you're putting a wood shop on your farm. That's pretty easy to defend. I didn't know, what have you. When you start jacking around with city-level code officials and there's $20,000 fines a day for doing certain things, you really want to be careful. My belief is the way you protect yourself from this is I don't want to be out there doing that work every day anyway. I would partner up with several good landscaping firms that'll take direction well. Have very clear articulated conversations with them. I'm not really interested in what you think you know about what needs to go on. I just need to give you directives and I need you to follow them, and if you can work with me, I'll bring you business. And have them do the installation work. And that makes that legal issue go away. Production. I think this is where a lot of folks want to be. Who here wants to be in the production revenue stream at some point anyway? The farmer, the rancher, what have you, right? Farming, real easy, man. If it's a vegetable or it's a fungus, I call it farming. If it's an animal, I call it ranching. And the reason I separate those two is because they're distinctively different markets when it comes to taking the product to market. How long is lettuce really good for after you cut it? Not long, right? You can, if you have a rabbit and you don't have somebody to buy it today, you can just wait a couple of days before you slaughter it. There's a much higher premium on the sale of animal product today in the marketplace than most vegetable products or most fruit, produce products. Pastured chicken, I see selling all the time between $18 and $30 a bird, and I see people paying it for it. There's a lot of money in things like salad greens and stuff like that, but it's a niche market, and it's a very important, I got to harvest and I got to know exactly when it's going, where it's going. Can't freeze salad greens. That's a market where you're looking into niches like partnering with local restaurants or restaurants less than 50 miles away and delivering them fresh greens for their fresh premium salads by the pound. That's a very good market. But to me, the animal market has a lot more power going for it because I can actually use the animal market to establish the vegetative systems with paddock shift, cell grazing, etc. But you really need to think, Joel stole a lot of my thunder, man. Going after him's tough. But value add. Value add is like the place where it's at as a producer. Who here has ever been to a farmer's market? Okay, of you guys who went to farmer's market, who usually gets suckered into buying a jelly, a chutney, a sauce, a seasoning mix, a bread, right? I mean, even when I buy nothing else, or cooking seasoning, spices, right? These things sell, and they sell at a premium because we've added value to them. We went down to a farmer's market in Fort Worth, and they had it was like summer when all our vegetables were coming in, and they had eggs, and I'm like, I have more eggs than I know what to do with. And I think I left with like $40 worth of sauces and pickled quail eggs and jalapeno pickled quail eggs, which were quite good, by the way. I think they were like $10 a jar. I bought 2 of them. And if I go back, I'll buy more. And think about how that actually starts to change the profit equation when you start to do these things. Seeds. I think seeds are something that a lot of us overlook, that we can really build a niche-based, localized business for ourselves. There's actually still independently owned and operated kind of general store-type businesses out there. I would be approaching all of them, nurseries, anybody with independent decision-making to sell localized seed of whatever the best of what I produce is. And if I had something that was lackluster, I wouldn't sell them that seed. I'd rather sell them 6 or 8 varieties of seed that are absolutely blow you away amazing adapted to my region than 18 where 12 of them are so-so. Because I'd want people begging for the quality of the genetics I was producing. And I think plants are the most underutilized thing in the permaculture world to build a business on. You want to make money selling mulberry trees? You cut a mulberry branch, you stick it in dirt, it roots. It's a new tree, you sell it. I see them sell $18, $20, $24 for a mulberry tree. There's a new dwarf variety out right now. I've got 25 of them coming in. They're selling for $20 to $30 a tree. They'll grow in a little pot this big on your tabletop, or you put it in the ground, they grow in a bush about this big. And you can propagate, I mean, if you can't propagate, start with mulberry, because if you can't propagate that, you're doing something wrong. But all of these plants can be propagated. Who here's read Paradise Lot? Eric Tosemeyer and Jonathan Bates, right? They started selling their plants because they put perennials in to the point where they were reproducing, to where they were weeding out their own perennials. And they were realizing as they were throwing it into a compost pile, that's a $10 plant, that's a $10 plant, that's a $10. Boy, that buys a lot of chicken feed right there. So they started actually selling through a company called Oikos Tree Crops, is who they do most of their resell through online, and then they sell locally. And, you know, they're selling things you just can't get anywhere else. You can build a nursery business as a backyard concern, or you can build it really big. I'm going to ask a question. I want somebody to stick their hand up, and I want you to give me an honest number. If you were going to build a business in permaculture, and not how I can trick you into saying we can do a consultancy in software as permaculture, in producing something to sell from the earth in permaculture and employ 12 people with full-time salaries, what do you think the minimum amount of land you would need to do that is? Anybody? A half acre. Now, it might be a little advantageous, a little aggressive, a half acre, but you might. I just came from Bob Wells Nursery in Lindale. They have 1.5 acres. He's got 12 full-time workers, shipping plants all over the country. Very strong local business, but very strong national business on 1.5 acres. Now, that changes the dynamics a lot, because all of us think I need 20, 30, 40 acres at least to be able to do all of these things. But if you can employ 12 people on 1.5 acres, that's pretty amazing. And how many people here have been frustrated when you do happen to go to a box store and you look at the fruit trees or the nut trees, there's like 5 of them, and there's like tons of rhododendrons and silverleaf maples, and there's a huge market for this. Who here's ever struggled to find a tree of a certain variety or type? There's your customers. Everybody around you is a potential customer. There's so much work to be done in that world. It's really unbelievable. Now, getting really creative. Here's where I started to turn my entrepreneur mind on, and how could you really take this to kind of a different level? Number one, I think there's a huge opportunity with commercial site development. I think churches are one of the most undertapped niches in America today for permaculture. And I see church after church after church putting in what? Community gardens. Little plots. Granny comes out and grows her corn and her peas or what have you. And every year they have to weed it, turn it over, irrigate it. And then you look and they have 2, 3, or 4 acres of field. They're covered by insurance. Anybody that comes on their property is covered by their insurance to exist as a church. They can invite people there. They're a perfect place to evangelize their faith and to evangelize permaculture. They're generally run by a very small group of people that have a common goal, unless you get into the mega church world, but you get in most churches, you know, you're talking to a board member or two, a minister or a priest. They can make a decision. It's not like public works. Oh, God, don't get me started on public works. What a nightmare. But you can go in and they have money, and they can fund it, and they have labor to offset costs because people will volunteer. And then this is what I would do. I'm going to give you the most amazing marketing thing you could do with churches. Make a little trifold brochure, put on the front of it, feed your flock, feed your community. And when you open it up, explain permaculture ethics, and then on the inside, explain what you can do for them. And we could come in and transform this into perennial production that will feed your flock first, and then give you the opportunity to minister and feed your community. And to teach your children where their food comes from. And you should be able to take it from there to all the things you could sell value to at the church level. Farm and ranch co-management. I'll leave that for a little bit later for the next slide, because We've got something coming with that. I'm going to actually give you my business model that we're going into next. Property value increase. I got this from Jeff Lawton. I mean, property value increase. Who here's ever seen a show like House Flippers or, you know, Real Estate Property Brothers or whatever? Guys go in, they buy a house, they clean a bunch of cat turds out of it, they paint it, right? They put it up for sale, they flip the house, and hopefully they make some money. And they give a bunch of fake drama in it so we're supposedly entertained while they're doing it. You can do this with real property, with no building on it whatsoever. There's so much property out there that's undervalued right now because nobody can see it through the permaculture lens. How many people here, after you learned about permaculture, started driving down the road and going swale, terrace, right? Right? So you see that. The person they're trying to sell that property to doesn't see that. They don't even understand that that's possible. It's beyond their conception. But we could go in and buy these properties, terraform them, not even plant them, put in swales, put in dams, put in a home site, put in access, and then flip the property. That's a viable business model. It's a little more capital intensive, but there's a lot of money out there right now seeking a good place to be. And while I found that it's very difficult to raise capital if you go out and publicly say you're doing it, networking and things like that will lead you to a lot of places where there's people with money that want to do these things. And partnerships like that are there to be leveraged. You can leverage a partnership with a person without taking advantage of them or being taken advantage of. You know, everything that I'm talking about today requires something. One, your business be ethical, and two, you do business with ethical customers. If you do business with ethical customers, you can give more than you ever thought was safe to do. And people say, well, how do I protect myself from unethical customers? Fire them. You no longer qualify to be my customer. Goodbye. Most businesses just don't have the stones to do that. I always have. It's always worked out well, and it's always let me treat my good customers better than they could ever imagine that I would, because I'm not wasting my energy on people that do not qualify for what I do. Niche production. There is so many opportunities in niche production. Diego has a video out. I can't remember the guy's name. It's over an hour long. It's a guy from somewhere here in Southern California that just farms jujubes. I didn't know that there was a business in jujubes. I've heard about the plant. Who here's heard of the jujube plant? Right? It kind of tastes like a little apple. Some of them, like, you pick fresh, you eat them right away, and some of them you leave them hang on the tree and they dry like a date. They call it Chinese date. Well, this guy says, like, he doesn't have any till like August. He's got customers, like, he's up on a ladder pruning a tree in July, and they're calling him, and are they ready yet? He's like, no. Oh, I knew they weren't ready. I called just to see if they were ready. I'll call them next week. No, don't call next week. Click. That's demand. That's demand. And this guy's farming a few acres of jujubes. He's doing more than one salary because he's got workers working for him. He's an older retired guy. And just watching that video, it wasn't the most exciting video, right? It was a little low-key. But I had no idea there were so many varieties and so many opportunities and so many ways just with this one plant species to stretch it out. And then what he found out was, well, people pay like $29 a plant for these things. And every year they send up shoots. So he waits till winter, he digs the shoots, and he grafts all winter long and then sells the plants. So that's almost a monocultured style business. But yet he's able to earn a living on a few acres of land by combining two things, the fruit, the food, and the plant propagation. And it happens by itself. And I'll just say this at this time, and I won't take questions because I'll run out of time soon, but what other opportunities can you think of? And I'd love to have conversations with all of you guys after this and throughout the next couple days about what you can think of that we could do. But I actually want to tell you how to sell permaculture right now. I actually spent a very large part of my life having my soul sucked out of me in corporate sales. But it did teach me a lot about business and a lot about psychology and a lot about how to effectively sell. And this is the best sales pitch I could ever give to somebody on permaculture. Mr. and Mrs. Landowner, what we are able to do with permaculture is show you how you can provide the highest quality food and care for yourselves and for your children. We can show you how to do this in a way that will never do any harm to your land or your neighbor's land. In fact, your land will become more fertile year after year. The techniques and materials we use will also never do anything to harm people, pets, or livestock. In fact, by eliminating toxic food and replacing it with food better than anything you can buy, your family will become healthier year after year. The best part is our systems generate surpluses in abundance which can be continuously reinvested so that you can always provide top quality food to your family and continuously improve the natural systems around you. This is something that actually matters and applies directly to you and those you care about. It is something we can help you do now. No political action is required, no massive shift in your lifestyle, just a better way to live through a few gentle shifts we can help you accomplish over a single season or two. Anybody buying? Anybody know what that is? It's the prime directive in the 3 ethics. Permaculture is its own business model. We don't need any outside influence to sell permaculture. In the very front of the book, the sales process is laid out for you. Bill Mollison gave us the most powerful sales tool we could ever have, and we just had to figure out that's what he's done. That guy was kind of clever with not telling you everything, hitting you over the head with a million facts. But that's all that is. Care for yourself and your family. Take responsibility for yourselves and for your children. Care for the earth. Not going to harm your yard. Not going to harm your neighbor's yard. Not going to harm your pets. Care for people. Take good care of you're going to be able to take good care of your children. Return of surplus. Everything that we generate that normally would be waste will go back into the system and make it stronger so that you have high quality food for your family and for your neighbors. Simple. And this has kind of paid off for us as we've looked at trying to do something ourselves. Who here is familiar with PermaEthos and what I've tried to do with PermaEthos? PermaEthos started out as a community model. We were just going to have 140, 180 families living on 200 or 300 acres of land, turn it into a permaculture paradise off-grid. I had investors lined up. I had people lined up. And we started trying to figure out where we could do this. And then we ran into government. Where's your master plan? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to spend $100,000 to do a master plan and be told no. Could you please tell us what we have to do to comply with this? And we just ran into one headache after the other. So I said, I know what I'll do with my large reach. I'll set up an awesome permaculture farm and I'll sell shares in it. And we ran into the Security and Exchange Commission who said, you can't publicly solicit investments. So I started thinking I could bring in accredited investors and things like that, and then all that would do is basically write out the very people I was trying to help that wanted to be involved. And because I've said several times to be open with what you're doing, don't hide what you're doing, hold on to your intellectual property like you would hold sand. If you hold sand really, really tight, you end up with no sand. If you hold sand loosely, you actually can hold some of it in your hand. This is how you should hold your money, your property, your IPR, everything. Hold on to it loosely. Hold on to it, but don't hold on to it with a tight fist. Well, because we did that, because we've always been upfront about it, at my last workshop, a guy walked up to me and said, hey, take a look at this, and he showed me a property. 110 acres, location yet to be disclosed. We're going up there. We're probably going to sign with this client an official relationship beginning next month. We're going to build, manage, and establish a permaculture farm. They are long-term listeners to my show, very much in sync with what we want to do. We're looking to do a long-term partnership with them, and this will let us move faster than we ever planned on. We're also going to take on a unique revenue model, I guess. We're going to manage both client-owned and company-owned farms over time. We're going to develop groundbreaking and affordable web-enabled education programs. Notice I said web-enabled, not web-based. So that means we're going to enable what we do with the web. And we're going to cultivate not just plants, but human beings. That's our real goal with PermaEthos. We're setting up a system where we have a head farmer and 2 tenant farmers that work with that head farmer. The goal over a season is to train those 2 farmers to go establish 2 more farms. And then have those bring in another 2 and do this over and over and over again. Because here's what I believe about permaculture and farming. There is a war on, whether we like it or not, with people that may be well-intentioned, but they know nothing about farming, and they know nothing about agriculture, and they know nothing about health. You heard about a lot of it from Joel today. He can't write a book in his office because it's manufacturing. This kind of nonsense, we don't have time for it. And the only way we're going to win this is to have so much going on in so many places that it's unstoppable. So it's lit a fire under me. It's the only thing that could have ever drugged me back into business. And When I think about cultivating human beings, I think of one of my most favorite quotes of all time. The ultimate goal of farming is not just the growing of crops, but the cultivation and perfection of human beings. Masanobu Fukuhara. I probably pronounced his name wrong. Best I can do. When I read that resonated with me in a way that I can't even imagine. And what I want to share with you guys here now at the end of this is what the power of intention can do. Because I talked about having a goal larger than your business, 5,000 people that would know. When you talk that way, people tend to look at it and say, well, that's that etherical stuff, right? You'll manifest it into creation. And these things have to come with a lot of hard work over time. But setting intention in a business works. When I first started my show, and I still liked Glenn Beck at the time, I told my wife would be on the Glenn Beck show. She laughed at me. She believed it, but she still laughed at me. A couple years later, we were on the Glenn Beck show. Oh, I have another intention that I've always set with what I'm doing. I try to speak words that move people, that bring them to action. And an intention I've actually never shared publicly is I had the intention that someday my words would be published along people that I had no business being published along with. That, you know, maybe somebody like Thomas Jefferson or something like that. Sounds crazy. Take your book, your Permaculture Voices program, and if you open the back page and look on the inside of the back page, you'll see a list of quotes there. Diego had no idea about this, and I didn't know this until this morning when I saw it. But except for Oprah Winfrey on the inside cover, if you look at everybody else, I'm the only person on that page even alive. That's an intention in a business manifesting itself into reality because of hard work. And I owe Diego an incredible thank you. I am kind of honored. I didn't think I'd actually be alive when it happened, you know. And I know it's not in the Wall Street Journal or anything, but actually it means a hell of a lot more to me that it's here with you guys. And I'll actually tell you that I thought a lot about not telling you guys this because I thought, well, it kind of sounds like being a big bragger or something. But you know, I wanted to kind of leave you with the fact that if you actually put intentions into your business, that just what Diego was saying at the beginning of today's show, that which seems impossible is simply something you haven't done yet. That it actually works. And then when it shows up in front of you, you don't ignore it. You point it out. And I think that every single one of you that really wants to do something with this can, and I think that every single one of you will do it a little bit differently, and I think that's great. And I think there's room for this on the technology side, on the propagation side, on the production side. But what's really going to make it work is you. It always looks easy when people have done it already. It always sounds easy when an expert explains it, because that's what makes you an expert. Experts are not people that make complex things sound complex. They're people that make complex things easy to understand. But there's a difference between understanding something and doing something. And the key to success in your business is permaculture, because permaculture is sustainability. And what it really comes down to is you need to think in your business, how can I deliver more value than every dollar I receive? How can I put more out than ever comes in? That's sustainability. And anything else is a mining operation. And I don't see a lot of miners here. I see a lot of farmers. And thank you guys for being here with me today. And thank you for all you guys do. You guys are awesome.